welcome to the Cutmaker podcast, Brooks Koepka Stan Edition. This is our the YouTube show. We're going live, guys. We're gonna have a lot of fun this week. I sent this out on Twitter this week, and I'm really excited about this. I have two fellow huge BK stands on me with this week. We're going to talk some Koepka. We'll talk a little PGA, but more future of Koepka. We'll talk some Charles Schwab, and we'll talk a little random Marty Fish, who decided to randomly engage me today, which seemed to be fun. So, guys, welcome. Joe, Luke, introduce yourselves, please. Joe, go first and just introduce yourselves for those who don't know you and just a little bit about, what you're doing. Obviously, you got a lot going on. Both of you guys are heavily engaged in betting, certainly betting and some DFS stuff. So, Joe, first, fire away, and let's introduce you guys.
Yeah, sure. My name's Joe Midone. At Tour Picks is where I do most of my work over on the Twitter machine. I've been betting and following golf closely for 15, 20 years, but started to sort of get into the content space about 4 or 5 years ago. Developed a Twitter account, have a podcast now that I host on Monday nights. We got to get you on there soon, Jeff, but it's called Preferred Lines, live on Monday nights on YouTube. Just happy to be a part of the Brooks Stand team, man. It felt great to finally get this monkey off our back. We started to get the doubters to creep in, so it was really nice, like Kermit sort of sipping the tea moment for me on Sunday as our boy slammed the door once again.
Absolutely. Luke.
Well, hey, welcome, man. Thanks for having me. I'm Luke Sweated Out. that is my Twitter moniker that I and my personality that I've kind of created on Twitter. That's where you're gonna find me for everything. I don't do I'm a guest on podcasts. I don't write anything. Like, I just like to bullshit on Twitter and try to say stuff that I think is funny and other people sometimes think is funny. I got my regular old day job, but yeah, I've been betting golf pretty heavily the last 4 or 5 years. Got into some like fantasy stuff a little bit before that, and that was kind of what hooked me in. And just a Brooks stan through and through. So I'm honored to be here with the two of you gentlemen who it seems like Brooks has brought us three together as friends on Twitter, and it's beautiful how Twitter and social media, despite all the horrible toxic things that it usually brings, sometimes
we'll talk about Marty Fish later.
Well, I'm like so curious. Yeah, I want to get into that at some point, but I'm really happy to know you two dudes and be friends with you guys, and just really happy to be here. So thank you.
Well, guys, honestly, this is the first time we've ever spoken, right? I mean, we've engaged on Twitter a lot, like a lot of people, right? You talk to people, you DM with people, but this is the first time we've ever spoken. So this is a lot of fun, and I'm excited for this. And couple things we'll get into, a little bit of the PGA. And honestly, guys, for me, this was interesting because I had, so the full disclosure, I was so sure Koepka was going to win the Masters that I had ROM tickets that I live cashed out and put it all on Koepka to win. And so I was so heavily invested. And that Sunday was like one of the top 5 most depressing days of my entire life. Like, I'm watching this thing just go down. And I know you guys, feel the same way. You empathize. Yeah. If anybody empathizes, you guys do, right? It was a tough scene. It was brutal. And all of a sudden, so I was at the PGA on Thursday, and I followed Brooks around for probably half his holes. And I was at the par 3, par 3-5, 4 or 5, where the par 3 is there on the front, when he chunked it over the green. Yep. And I'm like, hit a house. I've got this video. I'm like, hit a house. And it was kind of a grind, and you could just tell he was just kind of grinding through. But he didn't look uncomfortable. He just looked like, all right, we'll figure this out. And then Scotty Scheffler, of course, is lighting the world on fire. Everybody's going buck wild, and you're like, all right, here we go. But fast forward to Sunday, and we had a suite on 6. So I'm on 6 a lot. And 6, what a freaking hard hole. As soon as I got there, it was like, I saw everything beforehand. And I'm looking at this in person. I'm like, this hole is so fucking hard. I don't know how anybody plays this hole. And then we know what happened with Brooks on 6. I'm like, holy shit, here we go. Luke, we'll start with you. What was your thoughts on 6 when you saw Koepka just like pull out driver, YOLO, and miss?
Yeah, so I tweeted about this a little bit. I was at the lake. My wife kind of forced me into like this family day at the lake. And so every like 5 minutes, I'm sneaking off to pee in the woods. And I had better service than I expected. So I kept just pulling up my phone and checking everything. And yeah, me and Joe were talking, and it's like, I think I sent him a message after he played 4. I was like, oh, so he's just going to set the course on fire. Like, great, perfect. We're good. And then I pull it up, and yeah, he's in the water. And, you know, it was there's a little bit of panic that sits in, right? Like here we go again. We've all bet enough golf that like one stroke, one bad momentum thing can set it all off. And Vic was playing well at the same time, so it wasn't like we had a ton of room to work with. But
and Scotty's coming up from behind too, right? Scotty starts heating up. That was the other thing.
So my mentality was just like, if we can make 5 here, no harm, no foul. Like 6, Scotty called 6 the hardest hole he's ever played. There's bogeys to be made on 6. And then I think it was on 6 that Vic put it in the bunker as well, right? So he had a tough up and down. So I'm like, you know what? We could potentially get out of here bogey. No ground lost. Even if we lose 1 stroke, that's the beauty of starting off as hot as he did, is he allowed himself a chance to make a mistake. And we know that Brooks, what makes him Brooks is the mentality thing, right? He's not the kind of guy most of the time that lets one bad swing, make the wheels come off. So I wasn't super panicked, but I wasn't stoked.
Well, and Joe, you probably, again, I think we were all thrilled to see his recovery shot there, right? And I mean, when you saw that, like, what were you thinking?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was like, I think there's a video on my page of like me react. This is like, I was actually taking a video of myself. I'm making chicken cutlets. I'm like fired up. I ate an edible. I'm a little bit drunk. And I like film myself and I'm like, oh, because first I see Victor hit. And I'm like looking at myself and I'm like, oh, that's leaking. Like Victor's shot's leaking, right? Like this thing might actually be over. And it stays in the fairway. And then Brooks hit it. And I'm like, no. So my first reaction is like, where did that go? I couldn't tell if it went over and landed in grass, but was like, obviously just so many things to be impressed with the guy about. But was a little flustered because I could hear the CBS guy basically saying like, we're not sure where it went in. And Brooks, like, I don't know if you picked this up on the coverage, but he was like, do you have it on TV? And the rules official talking to him was like, no, we don't have it on TV. Yeah. And I'm like, bullshit, you don't have it on TV. Everyone knows, like, tell them where it went in. So they're trying to figure it out, him and Ricky. And then obviously just so impressive because once they finally, like, he took his time with that. He didn't rush it by any means. He kept sort of his rhythm, his pace, his walk. Everything was perfect. And then once he took the drop, Ricky handed him a club and he stepped up like he did all day. And instead of thinking about it forever and taking practice swings, he just hit the shot, man. And he got to the back of the green to 40 feet, and he made bogey. And the reality is like that hole was playing like over a half stroke over par. So he hit his worst shot of the day, which we all fear, right? When Brooks is on the tee, is that big wipe. We knew the most dangerous place for that big wipe was the 6th hole. Mm-hmm. And the worst case scenario happened, and he lost like a quarter of a shot to the field. And so it was like, this is as bad as it can get, it felt like. And the guy still managed to really hold it together. So moving on past that, I felt pretty confident in his distance control. Luke was first to pick up on it. I talked a little bit about it yesterday, but was absolutely like professional class level all week. Like it was just perfection from there on out in terms of distance to hole to the distance to shot, like adrenaline, nerves, all that stuff that affects other players in a negative way seems to have a reverse effect on him and create positive outcomes over the expectation level, which is, why I'm so impressed and enamored by the guy. And I just feel like he's one of the most clutch figures in all of sports.
Well, and again, you tweeted this out the other day, Joe, and I commented on this, with the exception of extreme slow play, right? Which and for all, listen, we all love Koepka, right? And we can talk about this till the cows come home. But to with that one exception. He tilts himself off so bad. And I saw this a little bit in the coverage that somebody even said he looks to be playing a little more deliberately, a little slower than he probably would like to. So he's not waiting on the next hole. And he probably, maybe he planned that, maybe he didn't, I don't know. But the bottom line is he had a 6-incher, whatever, right? He's lining it up. He's taking his
marking
time.
it. Yeah.
He's marking. He never does that.
No, he marked it, except for the 18th hole. He was marking 4-inch putts and like continuing his routine.
Right.
And like you said, Jeff and Luke, I know you realized it too. Like, I think that was a conscious, intentional decision on his part to like slow things. Like, I don't want to get to the next tee and wait. Like, let me take another 60 seconds with this little tap in. And it was just like, just in the moment to make the correct decision almost every time is what separates him. And that's ultimately what came down to, like, Victor played awesome, right? He made one terrible decision. It wasn't about execution at all for Victor all day. He made one really bad decision to try and go for that green on 16 instead of get out and try to make par. And that's ultimately what burns people on Sunday of majors.
Yeah, well, there's no question, and yeah, when we can talk about this ad nauseum. Listen, it was great, but let's talk about the next two majors, right, for a second, and let's talk about pricing and so on, because first of all, the U.S. Open is coming up in 3 weeks or so, or less than a month, and so when we look at this, yeah, I mean, so he was drifting south all like as the tournament's going on, right, like 20, 18, 16. I get a text from Mitch Moss, and he said, hey, at what point are you betting Brooks? And I'm just like, I bet him at 22. I bet him at 20. I bet him at 18. And I said, Mitch, if you don't have any, I think 16 is going to be a good price. It is a good price right now.
Yeah.
And what's interesting, though, guys, is I mean, it's going to be fascinating because you can't bet Rory at the U.S. Open. You can't. I mean, you can. You're lighting money on fire. You can. It's a terrible bet. I mean, realistically, it's got to be Scheffler, Rahm, BK, right? And then everybody else. And, and look, Homa will be a popular play for obvious reasons, right? I'll probably have a Homa ticket. I mean, I think I might even have already have a Homa ticket. I mean, that's a good bet. But listen, I mean, no one's going to be surprised if he wins again. And I can't see. I mean, I'm going to play him in matchups, and that's where I'm thinking a lot of value is going to come in. Not so much in the outright market where we've lost some juice, but you give me plus money BK against Scheffler or Rahm, I'm in.
Yeah, that's the thing. He's going to be plus money against those guys, right?
Exactly.
Like they're just they hold this kind of spot in golf right now where they are kind of considered to be in a different class, and they really are, right? Like, I mean, they're playing ridiculous golf. And the one thing we have on our
Luke, we see him on TV every week. That's the thing. That's the difference.
Which is that was exactly what I was going to say. Is the one thing we have, going for us to our advantage as Brooks backers, is that we're just not going to see him. No one's going to see him until then, right? I mean, a couple of people who have watched CW, like, I don't know, man. I love Brooks. I don't tune in to watch the live stuff. Like, I just don't. It's just not. It just doesn't interest me. I follow to see how he did, but like I'm not watching it, and no one's really watching it. And so the one thing that we have going for us is that he's not going to win one of these. He's not going to win Colonial, right? Like Scheffler might win Colonial, and then all of a sudden the price goes down again, right? So that's the one thing we have going for us is that out of sight, out of mind. Potentially, we get the drift on him. What we should be hoping for is that Scotty wins Colonial. Rahm wins wherever he plays again. Rory looks good at the Canadian or whatever. Like, we want those guys to play well between now and
winning would be great.
Yeah. 100%. This week would be perfect for Homa.
Yeah.
And so that's the best thing that can happen to Brooks backers is that the other top guys play well between now and then. And then we catch something that is halfway reasonable. If he's the fourth or fifth guy on the odds list, I'm betting him. I'm betting if he's the favorite. Let's get real.
Yeah, right.
I'm betting him, dude. I just think that we clearly have seen in a whatever, call it limited sample size, but as far as majors go, right, they are just limited. We only get 4 of them a year. Brooks at the PGA and the US Open, that's what he's bred for. That's his jam, right? If it's in the state of New York, all the better. But it just doesn't matter. That's where he plays his best golf. The way that those golf courses get set up, it's tailor made to him. Patient, locked in, confident. Never scared of the moment. Has every part of his game, that's as good as anybody else when it's clicking. And so I think, man, LA Country Club, watch out.
Joe, I want to ask you about this. Because I think you're one of the only people who watch Live. I watch Live. I think you watch Live. I have 2 TVs set in my living room in here, and I watch Live on on one of the 2 when I'm watching golf. And I was one of the very, very few people, and I think, Joe, you were one too, who was on a little bit of Cam Smith this week.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, and it's funny. So I'm in this draft with a bunch of VSiN personalities, sportsbook directors, where we draft a team just like fantasy football style, right? I had the 3rd pick. I've been in it for majors now, for every major for the past 3 years. And honestly, I've never won shit because I always either draft Koepka when he fails or whatever else. This year, I just went Team Live. So I had Koepka, I had Cam Smith, and I had Bryson. And I murdered and smashed. I had first round leader. I had overall winner. I had like Team Live. It was amazing. And as much as I look, Brooks is very live to win any major he goes on the course on, right? I mean, Cam Smith is going to be a bet. He's a bet I'm making, and I'm going to continue to bet because, to your point, Luke, people aren't watching Live, and every time one of these guys, I kind of hope a Homo wins, because that'll help his Open Championship odds, right? And drive Cam Smith's up. So Luke, Joe, tell me a little bit about, diverting from Brooks a little bit, about your take on Cam Smith. Have you bet him in the Open? Because Cam Smith is, he backdoored top 10 this week, but super, super live. And I think in a phenomenal spot. I think we have a phenomenal buying opportunity here.
I love it. So I have a Cam Smith. The only ticket right now I have actually for the Open Championship is a 38-1 on Cameron Smith from about a month ago. You're right. I watched Live. There was this narrative at the Masters that he was hurt, which I think there was a little bit of truth to. I think everyone's got little ailments here and there. I just think he wasn't like full bore prepared. He was like at the very start of a run, and he played pretty well at the Masters. He hit like the shot of the Masters with that 3-wood out of the bunker and was solid there. And then I think 7th place is his worst finish in the last 4 Live events. He's got a 2nd, 3rd, a 6th, and a 7th. He's up there in terms of birdies. He's up there. He's obviously the number 1 putter on the Live Tour. He's the number 1 putter on the planet, let's be honest. And he's got a game that people want to box him in a little bit, and he's got the intangible, honestly, that Brooks has in the clutch gene. Like, this is a guy that stared toe-to-toe against John Rahm at the Tournament of Champions on a course that doesn't fit his game whatsoever, and slayed him. This is a guy that won at the Players Championship, a totally opposite course that is the most demanding off the tee on the PGA Tour. He won that. He won at Sony, which is a club down, narrow little course. Like, he can play at Augusta.
Well, St. Andrews, he freaking Rory. I mean, Jesus, that was the biggest one, right? That was
just
insane.
Really, really good. Yeah. When you are a great putter, and when you have magic around the greens, and when you have an ability to be clutch in big moments and stare down dragons when it matters and sink 8-foot putts, like anyone. Like, I love Cam. To your point, sort of on Brooks, like 14-1 now. I don't know. Are you still going to be there, Jeff, at 14-1 at the U.S. Open? Because for me, it's like, okay, so I had a 100-1 ticket at the Masters. I had a 24-1 ticket last week. I had the 40-1 ticket at Live Orlando. Like, these are big numbers, which are awesome. But like, do I still continue to go? Like, part of me, I feel a need to, like Luke, but the other part of me is like, okay, I have to at some point. Like, at what point do I say no? What number is that? Do you say no?
I think that's so for me, honestly. So I've got 22, 20, and 18. Okay, those are the tickets I've got now, and I'm stopping there. But I will tell you, don't think for a fucking second if on Saturday he's 2 shots back, I'm not going to dump back up the Brinks truck and just freaking dump it in and go all in, because I will. And,
Okay.
and so I think that's just it, right? It's like, is he in the hunt, and is he a little bit back? Because I'm not, because again, then you got a little bit of wait and see. But if I'm getting plus 400, 2 shots back going into Saturday, I'm going broke. I'm absolutely going broke. And then I'm going to invest the real money, because listen, we don't make huge bets on a 40-1 Brooks outright 100. You know, you've got $100 on whatever it is, right? You got a little money on it, but I'm gonna have 2K if he is 4-1 2 back on Saturday. That's when I'm gonna start investing some real dollars in this thing. And yeah. So guys, let's talk a little Charles Schwab here this week. We'll get away from Koepka for a second here. But before we get to Charles Schwab, I asked you guys this, and I have this is like a confession for me. I've never confessed this before, but like I have a problem. I have like 2 guys who, and I need you guys to talk me through this. This is like a intervention. I'm asking for some help here. I have 2 guys who I chronically bet, and I'm curious who yours are. 1 or 2 guys over the age of 30. It can be anybody who you have probably had some success with at some point, and you find a way to bet even though you maybe should or shouldn't do it. Luke, give me one first that you could think of that you just like, okay, this guy's not in his prime, but I'm always in on him. And then I'll share you my 1 or 2, and you guys can talk me off the ledge.
So there are a couple that I think may be common between us, and I'll just briefly touch. I mean, Ricky and Tommy Fleetwood are 2 that I think, and probably everybody on Twitter, like everybody just bets these guys. They're hard to get away from. I don't even know that I've had success betting them, though. That's the thing. So it doesn't really fit your question. But one guy that I've noticed as I look through kind of my previous bets over the last year and a half that I bet a lot is Tom Hoge. And I'm not sure Tom Hoge is that good. I did. Okay. So that's the thing is like,
God.
Is that Tom Hoge used to pop in all these like alternate field events, all these like kind of weak field events, and you kind of see him pop in like these weird birdie fests. It's like, this guy's a guy maybe. And then the first time I really like had a good bet on him was at the AT&T Pebble Beach. And I was on Brian Kirshner's The Tappin' Birdies show, and I started my betting card at 70-1 Tom Hoge. That was the shortest shot I took at that tournament, and he won it. And I just felt like a genius. And I was like, this is so easy. Tom Hoge, anytime he's got wedges in his hand, is a wizard. And then there's a lot of golf courses on the PGA Tour where you got a lot of wedges in your hand. And I think I've bet Tom Hoge every goddamn time he's played since then. It's like the guy is.
So it's funny. And Joe, I want to hear yours in a second, but this is so ironic. I wasn't planning on this because mine ties into this perfectly, because Tom Hoge is one of mine. And my other, who I've won a fortune on 2-ish years ago, is Harris English.
Oh,
and that was going to be my other one.
And so, and guys,
at the fucking Travelers,
I had a $5,000 matchup ticket head to head.
Oh my God.
Hoge and Harris against Adam Hadwin and Nick Taylor in Zurich, and they were winning. And then Hadwin and Taylor went fucking nuclear and alternate. They were like 9 under an alternate fucking shot.
They did,
on Sunday. I was
this year they set the record, didn't they?
Yes, I was just pure horror. I'm like, how are they losing to these freaking Canadians? How is this happening? It was so tragic. Oh my God, it was the hardest thing to watch ever. Joe, give me your over 30 Stan who you can't get off.
Yeah, so I'll give you one that I've had success on. I'll call it once.
Okay.
But it's Gary Woodland. Like, I'll always find a way to get back to Gary. The US Open was magical at Pebble. I'm gonna be on him at LACC. Like, let's be honest, I was one of the chalk guys who ate it at the PGA and witnessed that disaster playing with Brooks. I was there for the Masters, but The numbers are phenomenal. Like I believe that he is like one of the best long iron players in the world. So I put an increased emphasis on that in harder events, particularly the US Open and the PGA. So I'm looking for him to break through. He just never gets it done with the putter. You cut me off at 30 years old, or else I would say Denny McCarthy, because I pour more money into Denny McCarthy than anyone, but he is 30 years
Denny
old.
Dirt.
The guy that I never get right, though, and I look back that I bet a ton, and he never really wins, but he's like, well, top 10 anything, is Shane Lowry. Like, I miss the Open Championship. It always feels like you have a Shane Lowry, like, good number ticket at a 50 or a 60 to 1. And it feels like he'll tease you kind of there on Sunday around like 7th place, and just never brings it home. So those are my two. I've had some success with Gary that I think I'm probably up lifetime on Gary, because it was like an 80 to 1 there at the Open, but Shane is just a money pit for me.
Well, Shane Lowry last year at your home event at the Honda.
Yeah. Brutal.
Crushed my soul.
Well, and that's just it. I mean, I think that Lowry, I mean, I'm with you. Every time I'm on Lowry, I go left, he goes right. I couldn't agree more. Matter of fact, I was completely off him this past week, and he actually had a decent week. I mean, I missed the boat on that. So it's funny. Harris English is 90 to 1 this week, and Tom Hoge is 90 to 1 this week. Both are.
I was just looking at both those numbers.
And it's funny, guys. Like, when I have guys who are like on the course all the time, talk to Dennis Paulson, Carl Paulson on the pod, some of these guys, and they're like watching guys hit golf balls. Everybody says Tom Hoge is as good a ball striker as there is on the PGA Tour. And guys who played on tour, who know and we can all see the stats, and the stats bear it out. That's just so frustrating, because again, for me, it's Hoge and English has just lost so much, but his short game is wizardry now. It's like he's turning into damn near Cam Smith around the greens, but he's not long off the tee. His irons are kind of meh, but his short game is wizardry.
Yeah.
Well, both of them, are just what I would describe as flushers, right? I mean, Tom Hoge's certainly a flusher.
Oh, yeah.
And I think Harris English, before the injury, the hip injury,
yes,
people were talking about how that dude, other pros talk about how that dude just hits the ball the center of the club face every damn time.
Yeah.
And so I think with Harris, that's the thing that is tough for me right now to hop off, is like, he was 10th in the world. He was the world number 10 before that hip injury.
Oh yeah, he was like a shoe-in for like 8th place on Ryder Cup, President's Cup team for a while. It felt like,
and then he had the hip injury, and so since then we've seen some flashes. I mean, 2nd at API, 3rd at Wells Fargo. Like, he's not dead. He's still there. And I think that Harris kind of has the game to eventually bring it back, and I feel like it's going to be a week when nobody's on him, which could be this week. Spoiler alert for my what I'm thinking about, but I think he was a really popular PGA Championship pick. Like guys like Bamford and Andy Lack, and all these people who are super well respected in the space were on English at a crazy number, and he was just bad, right? So that's kind of the time. A lot of times we see. When to jump on somebody is like after the hype wears off. People were seeing something. There was something there, and just because it didn't happen the week that you wanted it to happen doesn't mean it's not going to happen. So I don't know. Maybe I don't know that we helped your problem there.
Well,
and we might be doing the opposite.
To make matters worse, guys, like, I'm looking at stats for this week, and guys, like, I just just a quick long-term, short-term model, and it's like top 2 guys, Fleetwood and Ricky Fowler. I mean, and it's like, and then Denny McCarthy 6th. I mean, it's like and it's like, feels like every week, a lot of time these guys pop. And then obviously Scheffler's right there. Justin Rose, I think, will be popular this week. He's a good bet. He's a good play. He's probably a guy I'm going to bet. I think one guy, guys, I'm curious. He's popular-ish. And I don't think he's going to be super popular this week. He's an Indiana native, and he's a Hoosier. And Patrick Rogers this week, I'm curious, because like usually you think of Patrick Rogers in longer courses, right? And he grades out really well for me this week, and I'm looking into him, and in the midst of Sanjay M, Denny McCarthy, Max Homa, like all of a sudden Patrick Rogers like randomly pops up in here. Are you guys going to play him in DFS or bet him this week?
I won't. I'm kind of never Rogers. He's just not one of my guys. I usually try to stick to my, like, when you're not okay. So it's one of those weird things, right, Jeff? When you're like not on a guy and everyone's on him and he doesn't come, like you feel sort of vindicated, and like these other people that almost get stuck going back to him, and you can just kind of sit back, and I can name 20 events over the last 5 years where I've listened to podcasts and people have told me he's going to win and he's going to be very popular. And DFS is a little bit of a different story. Like my show is mainly focused on outright betting, where I put most of my eggs sort of into that basket. DFS is a little different story because he can easily top 5, top 10, but he's just not part of the staple guys that I like to lose money on.
Well, no, that's fair. Luke, you ever play him?
I'm so glad that Joe used the term never Rogers, because literally in my mind I was going to say I am a never Rogers guy, because he's just not one of my guys, and some people love him and think he's fantastic, and like I would understand why the models would like him. I mean, his recent form outside of Wells Fargo is terrific. In my model, 36th-ish, which for like a cheapish guy and kind of a long shot, like that's a look. So in DFS, yeah, certainly, I'm not a DFS guy, full disclosure.
Yeah.
But so that would make sense as a play to me. As a bet, like I'm trying to pick the winner. So that guy doesn't win.
Jeff, okay. How much do you put into like how much weight do you put into like stat? I'm interested to hear your sort of perspective on this. How much weight are you putting into like stat models and strokes gain data versus just like what you see with your eyes and like eyeball tests and gut feel? And do you think a guy has it or not? Or do you follow the numbers more?
No. I would say I'm probably 75-25 stats to eyeball and gut. And you're right. Listen, and I'm not saying I'm going to bet Patrick Rogers. Like I think that, but he's because he hasn't won, right? And I feel like it's one of those things, like once you've done it, a guy who's close and stats this week, what I'm interested in is Nick Taylor. Nick Taylor's won a tournament. Yeah. Right. Nick Taylor just fucked me with freaking Hoagie and Harris. I know Nick Taylor can go nuclear, and I mean he's won a tournament. So like I look at guys like that, and so no, I mean listen, because I think you can only be so much stats guy. Yeah. Because if you're that stats driven, you're going to end up walking off the same plank as everybody else. Right. So on weeks where everybody wins, you're going to win, but your numbers are going to be depressed because everybody's going to be on that bet. Right. So you've got to have some zig when everybody else zags, AKA Cam Smith. Great example. Right. Yep. And so, I'm not afraid to take a contrarian, hey, Harris English is a great point this week. He's a great example. Yeah. Right? Harris English was dog shit last week when everybody was on him. Now they're going to hop off. He's 90-1 now. Now's the time to bet Harris English, not last week, right? I think that's a Hoagie's kind of same example. If you're a Hoagie stan, right? And another, but guy like I went to Mizzou, and so I'm a Buckley guy, and I think Buckley's interesting. He blew it. We saw him a month or two ago. He was coming down the stretch, and he was, but am I going to bet Buckley? I might sprinkle a little out, right? But I don't mind a Buckley top 10 this week, of a play like that. But guys, one guy who is so interesting to me, who has been on a really good run. He was really popular in the DFS streets last week. What do we do with Taylor Moore? Because nobody ever talks about him. Yeah. Nobody talks about this guy, and all he does is have success, right? Like you look at his, he is
Jordan Spieth, yeah.
I mean, Taylor Moore is like low key good, and I don't even know what to do with him. Joe, where are you at with Taylor Moore?
I mean, I'm hit or miss on him. Like in terms of DFS, I kind of lean some of the other guys around him, probably if I'm being honest. But I think he's like I've played him before at big numbers with this sort of narrative that I believe he went to college in Texas. So he should have some sort of familiarity with the conditions and the local, just knowledge in terms of how golf courses are set up down there. The numbers have been fantastic. Like I'm looking at, like, obviously he's doing it mostly with the putter, which always concerns me a little bit from a stats standpoint. Broke through, got a victory. Like that's just massive for sort of confidence and everything that goes along with that. So yeah, I'm okay with Taylor Moore. Like I like guys who were, you mentioned it, like guys who were popular. There was great reason to play them, and they just burned someone. Like I think about Jason Day. Like he burned so many people at the Wells Fargo, and then he comes out the next week and wins. Before that, it was Wyndham Clark burned everyone in Mexico, right? Everybody had Wyndham Clark. This week, like, it kind of reminds me a little bit of like Ricky, because I think Ricky was one of the highest owned guys of the entire PGA Championship. Misses a cut. I don't think many people are going to go back and play him. Not nearly 24% or whatever he was last week.
No,
so
he was the highest played player.
Yeah.
A lot of time, in many tournaments in DFS was Ricky Fowler.
Absolutely, he
that's
was.
The week you do not want to be on Ricky Fowler.
Yeah,
he's the highest known guy. That's the week. No, you're right. I think that's, and you know who else screwed a lot of people last week, including some of my lineups? Sungjae. Well, I mean, that never happens. You never see that Sungjae. Luke, where are you at on Sungjae?
So Sungjae was a guy that I thought about for your question about, guys we like to play too much, but he didn't, age-wise, he's super young, right? And there's a person on Twitter who I'm buddies with who like is maybe a little over the top with like berating people for betting Sungjae, right? He has won 2 tournaments, and I hit his first ticket at the Honda, and so and I was on him when he lost he lost in a playoff to Sebastian Munoz at Sanderson, right? And I actually had Munoz too, just a little flex on you. But anyways, Sungjae is a guy who, man, super likable, right? Like he's just so like electric to watch, and he does, from a stat perspective, he's going to pop all the time because he does everything well, right? He gains off the tee, like his strokes gained off the tees numbers are crazy because his accuracy is so good, and he's decently long. He's not super short. There's weeks where like the putter is crazy hot, his hands are super nice, so his around the green's really good, and then when the irons fire, it's going to be a top 10, and that's the thing is you look at his form, and it's a lot of top 10s, a lot of like backdoor contention, a lot of like, but really, was he ever in a position to win the golf tournament is kind of the thing with Sungjae. So from like a DFS perspective, if you can get ownership leverage, I think he's always a good play. He's very popular because he's Sungjae, and like I think everybody just loves him. But I'm starting to like, I've self-cured myself, right? I've of betting him every week because he's at numbers that are in my mind unbettable for his actual win equity, right? Yep. He's won twice ever, and one of them was like a fall swing event. He's just not taking down these fields where like the other elites are showing up, and that's really, he's not playing every week like he used to. He's mostly playing the real events, right? So from a betting perspective, I'm mostly out on Sungjae at the moment. From a like, this guy's really good at golf though perspective, like I still think that that's accurate, and he's so young that like anything could happen. I mean, Hideki, he's kind of in that Hideki mold, right? He came on so young.
Yeah.
Sungjae's like 23 or 24. We feel like we've known him forever.
Well, and here's what's interesting with Sungjae, guys. I mean, and I'm sure you guys do too, but I mean, I do a ton of head-to-head matchups. I probably over the course of a weekend bet 40 to 50 head-to-head matchups. And I will tell you,
you do full tournament or
I do full tournament, but I do round by round. I do probably 7 or 8 full tournament, and I probably do 40 round by round over the course of the weekend. And I will tell you, the single sharpest guy or that bet in the sharp market matchups is Sungjae, period. He is the single sharpest guy betting head-to-head matchups. And I guarantee you guys would agree with me. If I said to you guys, look, we're gonna do blindly every tournament that Sanjay and Tony Finau are in, forget who's gonna win, but who's gonna win a matchup, and it's -110 either way, you would take Sanjay every fucking week over Tony Finau because Tony's gonna win a handful and miss the cut, and Sanjay is gonna be top 10, top 20. And 60% of the time, you're going to win with Sanjay versus Tony. Tony's going to win more tournaments. Sanjay's going to win more matchups. I mean, is that where you're at, Joe, or where are you at in Sanjay in general?
Yeah, totally. So I agree with the sentiments that both of you guys said. I think it all comes down to what market are you playing.
Yeah.
There's a great example. Sanjay and Sam Burns are right next to each other in DFS salary this week. There's very, very different players in every sense of the word. Sanjay is like sustainable, high floor, 14th place. It feels like about the worst he's going to finish. But he doesn't win, right? He hits 71% of fairways. He's going to be very popular. Sam Burns hits 47% of fairways over the last 24 rounds. He's volatile. Sam Burns is going to miss some cuts, but Sam Burns has 5 wins in the last 2 years. Since May of 2021, 5 victories for Sam Burns. Like, this is all about sort of the market that you play. If it's DFS, if it's matchups, you have to factor in some ownership there, as he figures to be very highly owned this week. But if you're playing in sort of a 50-50 or a smaller DFS contest, or head-to-head matchups, or a top 20 market, I think Sanjay makes a ton of sense. If you want to try and nab a winner, and he's the defending champion at this event, and he's now, I've seen him up to like 32-1 in some spots, 30-1. He's got 5 wins in the last 2 years. Like, give me Sam Burns if we're talking an outright price. So I think a lot of it just comes down to what market are you playing and focusing your bankroll.
I think that's a tremendous point, Joe. I think that's a fantastic place, because you're right. There's no wrong answer there, right? Mm-hmm. If it's Sanjay or Sam, it's what's your market. Because if you're playing a head-to-head matchup, Sanjay is going to win 70% of the time.
Yes, if they're even, you take Sanjay every time.
But Sam's going to win outright 9 out of 10 times over Sanjay in that same spot. I totally agree. Guys, one other guy I'm curious. We'll wrap up here in a little bit, but no one's going to play this guy. No one's going to bet this guy, and it's kind of he popped well. He has good course history, and I struggle with this guy because I play him when I play him in DFS. He kills me. When I bet him, he kills me. I'm always wrong on this guy, but good course history. Form is like shit, good shit. Brian Harman, aka Murr, like what? I'll start with you, Joe. Like, where are you at on Brian Harman? Do you ever bet him? I mean, what in the world? What do we do? What do we think of Brian Harman, who could fucking win?
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about. I mean, he could low-key. He can maybe win. Certainly could finish top 10, or he could miss the cut. And he's like 8,200 in DFS, which is like. Seems way too high for Brian Harman. I am lost on Brian Harman. I'm like, my head is going 92 different directions.
Yeah, I think he's a very good player. You mentioned that he could win. I like it. I do bet Brian Harman probably more than I should. But the thing with Harman to me is when he's playing well, and he's not right now, but when he's showing legitimate, sustainable form, even though he has a particular course fit, I think when he has sustainable form, you can play him anywhere because he'll randomly show up at U.S. Opens.
Aaron Hills.
There he was. Like he'll do that. When he's not in great form, I think you have to be very much more selective on where you play him. And I think that a guy that, here I'm looking, he's still hitting 70% of his fairways. He's struggling a little bit around the green. This is one of the more important but easier places, I think, to get up and down on the tour historically. And it's a place where he has 4 of the last 5 years, 8th, 23rd, 31st, 14th. He's got good finishes. He's got good course history. It's not an overly long course. The fit is there, so I'm willing to sort of take on a little bit more risk when some of the results have been iffy.
Luke, you playing any shares of Murr?
I'm once again, I'm kind of a never Harman guy, right? If he burns you, he burns you. That's my kind of perspective on it, but. That is not to say that he's not a good player who like couldn't win or top 10 because so I do this for the Masters. I've been doing it for, 10 or 15 years where I put together like a little pool and they're kind of popular now, right? Where you pick like a certain guy or two guys in the top 10 and two guys in the top 20, whatever. So I've been doing that pool with like friends and family forever. And a buddy texted me, he's like, how is Brian Harman ranked number 29 in the world? And I was like, well, go ahead and look at what he did last year, bud. He had a top
run.
2 at RSM, a top 2 in Mexico, top 3 at the FedEx St. Jude, tied for 6 at the Open Championship, and 8th. Like I just rattled off, a bunch of top 10s. It's like the guy puts up the results, right? And he's almost like course agnostic, right? Like he can do it at these kind of birdie fest short courses. He could do it at a longer difficult test. He could, he's a good player. He's just not for me, especially from a betting perspective. But once again, right? Like if you're getting the right ownership in DFS, from what limited DFS knowledge I have, to me, it seems like ownership is king. So if you're getting the right ownership and you got a guy who theoretically, or realistically could be a top 10 play, go for it.
So let one more guy I want to talk about, and then we'll talk about pick some winners for this tournament, and then we'll quickly touch on Marty, and then we'll get out of here. So like insert.
I'm so excited for the Marty talk.
Insert Undertaker Jeff here. Back from the dead, Jimmy Walker. Like, I mean, this is because he is free in DFS this week. He's fucking free. We're in Texas. Like, if there's ever a Jimmy Walker spot, he has 2 top 20s here, right? He's in for Jimmy Walker, fucking elite form. Like for Jimmy Walker, he's in great form. Yeah, look, he's 6,500 on draft. He is free. He's probably not going to be popular. Can I talk you guys? So let's just say in a betting market. Can I talk you into a top 20 Jimmy Walker?
Yeah, you could talk me into it.
You don't have to talk me into anything. Outright winner, Jimmy Walker will be on my card, no doubt.
Wow.
That's like 250 to 1, I think.
Is that what he is?
He's playing great golf, man.
Is he 200 to 1? He probably is 200 to 1.
Yeah.
I think I've got a 250 at Circa.
Done. I love it.
Yeah,
I'm in.
Right. That's not a difficult ask for me. Like you said, elite form for Jimmy Walker. Pretty elite form for anybody who's not like a top 25 player, right? I mean, he's had a 14th, a 15th, a 25th, 22nd. Like he's making most of his cuts. He had a 13th at Farmers. I mean, the guy is. Look at we said the same thing about Harris, right? He was the 10th best player in the world, and then he got hurt. Jimmy Walker had like a disease
Lyme disease.
I don't know if it nearly killed him or what it did, but like clearly derailed his career.
Yes.
It wasn't the golf that was the problem, right? And even when he was like dealing with it, I remember you would look at a leaderboard and he'd be in the top 10 after round 1 and he'd be there after round 2 and then he would just fade. And that's like it was a fatigue thing.
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy Walker is a good goddamn golfer.
He's good at golf.
Seems like Texas is his like preferred place to play golf. It seems. Yeah, Jimmy Walker, you don't have to talk me into at all.
Joe, you in on him?
I'm kind of being talked into it. I'm looking now. I've got my buddy Rick's site up. Looking at last 24 rounds. I don't know if this is a mistake, but it says he's averaging 321 off the tee in terms of driving distance over the last 24 rounds, which is insane. Yeah, he's playing great in Texas. Look, when someone totally loses it like that and is in a very dark place, I like for there to be something for them to sort of point their finger at that isn't like, I suck now. He can point his finger at exactly what happened to him, much like Brooks could sort of point down at his knee and he didn't have to sort of shoulder it all like, man, I totally suck now. It's more like my knee, like I got screwed. Like I dislocated my kneecap. I should have been out a year. I tried to come back in 6 weeks. Like I screwed this whole thing up. But then when all of a sudden it feels healthy again, it's like, okay, I'm back. I'm feeling good. Like I never lost it. It was just an injury. It was just Lyme disease. It was just something else. So when you have something to sort of place a little bit of blame on. I think it can ignite a player's confidence when they start playing again. Like, look, I always had it. I just caught a really bad break at a really bad time, and now I'm sort of back. And I never really lost it. It was just a really unfortunate thing that happened to me, and he's playing fantastic. It's really hard to deny some of the form. And 6,500 in DFS and 250 to 1 are kind of outrageous numbers.
So guys, I know it's a great story, but now we're all a little bit over it. So I saw Jeff Sherman tweet out that Westgate posted Michael Block's first round score over under 72.5. And I text Jeff Sherman and I said, what's the max bet that you'll take on this? I got down, I've got down at 110 and 125, and now it's minus 160. Where are you guys at on Michael Block's first rounds? Great story, obviously, great story, and easy to cheer for. But realistically, like, how in the world does this guy get up Thursday morning and go out there and shoot a 69? I don't know how he does it. You think about the adrenaline and the emotions. I mean, we've all played golf, right? And none of us are on tour. I mean, Joe, you're probably a lot better golfer than I am. And I don't know, Luke, I know you may suck or be good at golf. I'm not any good, but I play in member guests. I play in member members. I know like adrenaline and golf tournament feels, and the letdown after this, there is no chance he gets up and shoots. If he shot an even par, it'd be a miracle. I mean, there's just no way. 72.5 is like, I can't get enough of that. I'll start with you, Joe. Where are you at on the story's great, but this tournament, where are you at on Michael Block?
Yeah, of course. You have to take the over there in terms of total score. You made the right bet. I probably won't have any of that action. So like I'll quietly sort of have my eye on him just to see how he's doing. But you have to take that bet. You're right. It's golf is unrepeatable, like day to day for anyone. So for a guy who basically told us that he doesn't practice, he just had the week of his life. I'm sure he's enjoying himself. He was not planning. He didn't have bags packed for Fort Worth. Like, this was all on the fly. He's done a million podcasts. He's doing interviews. He's got to be he has more distractions than he's ever had in his entire life. And a week ago today, he had 0 distractions heading into the PGA Championship. So a totally 180 from where he came into the last event with no expectations, no distractions, to now high expectations. There's Vegas lines, everything that comes into it. It just screams like fade it.
Luke, you're in Nevada. Did you bet it?
I'm going to go look for some ways to fade Michael Block. Now that you're saying, I'm going to go look for that. Look, there's a reason this guy is a PGA professional, given lessons, and not a touring professional, right? Like, no disrespect to him. He's a very good player. Incredible week at the PGA. I think he's got like a bunch of championships in like the Southern California PGA scene or whatever.
He's won he's been the outright champion of the PGA qualifier before. He's a good golfer.
The guy is legit.
Yeah, he's a good player.
But there's a reason that he's not a everyday PGA Tour player, right. And I think he's being priced like he is, which is, I think, a mistake. And let's not forget the Colonial's not an easy golf course,
right?
Over par scores are very common. Yeah, right. It's not the John Deere, man. This is a tough test. I mean, I think the winning score is usually in like the 8 to 12 range, right? Yeah. So, I mean, or 10 to 12, whatever it may be. So, for him to shoot like 3 over, I think he'd be like, I played good today, and that would cash your bet, right? If he went and shot 77, no one would be surprised at all. It was really fun story. The hole in one, crazy. No disrespect to him. The guy's got mad game, but yeah, I think it's time to fade him.
So, rocket scientist Marty Fish, and for those of you who don't know who Marty Fish is, he's an irrelevant doubles tennis player who retired about 8 years ago. He sent out this tweet earlier today. I don't know, maybe an hour or so ago. Let me look. Actually, it was 6:30 p.m., 6 o'clock Eastern. Sent out this tweet, and it said, what does Michael Block say if Liv offers him $20 million? And I just said, I was like, something to the effect of, this is the dumbest question I've ever heard, or something like that. And then I said, actually, I can tell you exactly what I said. I said, I quoted his tweet. I said, why do people ask questions like this? And then I said, the dude can't even spell 20 million today. And then Marty Fish and his genius, all his genius, came back out and said, like, you can't spell, or you can't, how do you spell 20 million? I've got it in my bank account. Number one, I will take the under on Marty Fish having 20 million in his bank account.
Under.
The max bet. And number two, I wasn't even talking about that fucking Muppet. And I was talking about Michael Block, who's out grinding as a tour pro. Of course he's going to take a $20 million live deal. That's the single dumbest. That's like saying, what would Jeff Seeley do? Would Jeff Seeley take a $20 million live deal? Yes. And I promise you, I make more money than Michael Block does. I mean, Christ, like, this is not a hard, why do people ask questions like that? And the fact that, like, and this guy, I couldn't believe he actually engaged me on this. I was like, this is amazing. So shout out to Marty Fish. Love to have you on the pod and talk about math. And there you go. Marty Fish, net worth $4 million. There you go.
I was looking it up as well. So you might make more money than Marty Fish too.
Yeah, I mean, my net worth's not quite $4 million yet, but maybe if I can get Marty to bet me a couple times, I can. We can swap net worths.
Michael Block would go play on the Live Tour for $0 signing bonus. Like, if he was able to be put on a team and like make the money that they're just making for their finishes and the team positions, he would go play there for free. Like, he doesn't need a signing bonus to, like, it's an insane question. It is Marty Fish. Is he the guy from like did he have like a 30 for 30 or something?
He had a Netflix special about going crazy or something. Like, I don't remember.
Yeah. Yes. Okay.
And I don't want to bad talk him too much. I don't know I don't know any of his backstory because he's irrelevant, really. I mean, he's completely irrelevant. But I feel bad for him that it was just really, really funny, and kind of came out with this. You guys will have to check out the Twitter thread when we get off here. It's
right before we got on, I was like, I logged on Twitter and I had a few more notifications than I expected. I was like, then I see Marty Fish is tweeting at us, chirping. What's happening?
Of all people I expected to engage before this podcast, Marty Fish was nowhere on my. I mean, Marty Bird is more likely on my radar than Marty Fish before he got on here. So
there's been guys. Some really look. Twitter has been toxic. Like, Brooks winning, and you guys know this. Brooks winning brings the absolute worst out of some people on Twitter. There have been some laughably, insanely bad, embarrassing takes that I've seen. I don't want to name any names. Luke and I have called a couple out. I've probably got more people upset with me in the last like 5 days since I posted the Scheffler thing than I ever had. So I'm going to keep quiet, but something about like Brooks winning just really irks people and like has them say some insane things. So maybe this is like an effect of him being upset that he lost money last week.
Marty Fish might have had John Rahm or something. Yeah. People are going through it right now.
If he had John Rahm, he was dead on Thursday, so that didn't really matter. So, all right, guys, real quick before we get out of here, let's give me a winner north of say 40-1 or north this week. Who you like for the Charles Schwab? I will start with you, Luke.
So we mentioned Hoagie and English. I think we might all get there. One guy north of 40 that I'm really looking at closely is Kurt Kitayama. Some of the strangest form that you'll ever see coming into the tournament. Winner at API, which was elevated, like, huge breakthrough win. I believe he missed his next 4 cuts and then finished 4th at the PGA. Kurt Kitayama's a guy. His world ranking is I think in the top 30. What he does well should fit this course fairly well. I've got a 65-1. That's a number I'm gonna go ahead and fire on.
Yeah, like it. Joe?
I'm trying to look. Where is he at in the Ryder Cup? Okay, so he's 11th in the Ryder Cup standings. Big move for Kitayama last week at the PGA in terms of Ryder Cup stuff if he wants to get in there. All right, so I'm going to whisper the one that I really think is going to win, and it's Denny McCarthy. But I will say the best bet 40-1 and over. I actually like Russell Henley a little bit, man. Like elevated. This guy is like only playing elevated events, which I don't understand why. He has obviously a much better chance of playing these other events, but there was a stretch of 4 straight top 20s, which were really impressive. The Masters, the API, the match play, and the Players. He top 20'd in all of them consecutively. 4th place at the Masters. His like kind of got a knock for these like shorter 70, 200 yard courses. Like he won the Honda. He used to win at Shell. He was like played pretty well at Sony before he blew it to Hideki a few years ago and burned me. But I'll say 40-1 on Henley is a nice price. I'll take.
I'm taking a guy right in that neighborhood who performed well. PGA performed well here last year. He's going to be popular, but I'm on Cam Davis. I think he's a good spot for him. 40-1, good price. Guys, there's a lot of good prices on good golfers, right? You can find a 55 Denny. I'm like we talked about. I mean, of course I'm going to bet Hoagie and English at 90-1. I'm going to throw a couple bucks on him. I mean, but my 40-1 or higher pick to win, Cam Davis. I think we're there. So, guys, we just hit the 1 hour mark. This was a blast. Thanks a ton for coming on. We will definitely have to do this again. And if BK wins another, when BK wins the U.S. Open, we'll do this again. But we'll wrap up. Again, you guys can find Joe at Tour Picks, Luke at Luke Sweat It Out. You guys are awesome. Thanks for coming on. Go BK. We'll keep cheering them on, and we'll cheer on our picks this week. Thanks for joining us, fellas.
Cheers.
Thanks
Thanks
guys.
Jeff.